St. Thomas University Journalism present The Basement Files.
Hello, and welcome to the Stu Basement Files. I'm Mitchell Pearden.
And I'm Kennedy Bowden-Welch. Here are our top stories.
The Syrian crisis and how refugees are being welcomed to Fredericton and settling in.
How the closure of the ferry is affecting the people of Gagetown.
The Syrian refugee crisis has become one of the most controversial topics throughout this year. A new wave of Syrian refugees are settling in New Brunswick. Some are sponsored by the government and others by churches and families. Sarah Perez takes a look at the welcoming refugees in the province and the process they have to go through.
Syrian refugees arriving in New Brunswick, caught up in one of the worst humanitarian tragedies in our time. More than 10 million Syrians are either refugees or internally displaced. Between January and February, 330 refugees arrived in New Brunswick, one of the leading places to welcome refugees in Canada. Canada said it would welcome 25,000. New Brunswick offered to help 1,500. Refugees Welcome Fredericton organized a rally for the newcomers and asked Canada to do even more to help.
We are all part of this global community, and like it was said there up on the stage, that we are all immigrants of some sort. So it's our responsibility to protect and support the other members of this global community.
The last weeks in United States, in Canada, in a lot of part of the world, we heard a lot of bad comments, racist comments, and discriminatory comments. So it's really important for us to say to refugees that, no, just a second, like one guy there in United States did not represent, what the people in Canada and United States are thinking.
We refuse to hate. We will not tolerate any form of hatred. We will not tolerate any form of discrimination. We will stand up for those new members of the community, just like we would stand up for anyone who cannot stand up for themselves, locally or globally.
And some remember their own experiences living in refugee camps.
Other 6 to 8 families from all over the world lived in a very constrained space. What has stuck with me to this day was the constant fear and suspicions among the refugees. We were all from different parts of the world. We didn't know each other. We didn't know what would happen to us.
Refugees arriving now aren't too sure what will happen to them either. Some are sponsored by the government, but in New Brunswick, most are privately sponsored by families and churches. In February, the University of New Brunswick hosted a town hall on resettlement. Major Drew Willis of the 2nd Battalion Royal Canadian Regiment worked overseas and screened refugees on their way to Canada.
When you see the look on children's faces when they know they're going someplace that they're going to be safe, or the look on parents' faces when they know someplace that their kids are going to be safe, it's a very rewarding feeling.
Resettling refugees isn't a new thing for the Multicultural Association of Fredericton. It's something we've been doing for many years, What's different in this case, and what was also different with in the Kosovar situation, is the volume and is the pace, the speed. Normally in Fredericton we receive 70 to 80 government-assisted refugees in a calendar year.
Already, Fredericton has received nearly 5 times as many refugees as last year. Fredericton Mayor Brad Woodside asked for a break because the work was overwhelming for volunteers. But Provincial Cabinet Minister Francine Landry said the province is nearing its goal and they won't stop the intake of newcomers.
But we have received families of 10 and families of 9, and that makes things like finding permanent housing a bit more complicated because the housing stock in the city has changed, and we don't have a huge housing stock for families of 10, especially that are at the rates of support that people receive. And those rates are the same rates as someone would receive on social assistance for the first year that refugees receive.
I'm really grateful.
Laila Rameh was a humanitarian activist in Syria and now works in the Refugee Welcome Committee in St. John and Fredericton. She fled Syria because she was threatened to get detained with her daughter.
I did not arrive here as a refugee because I wasn't thinking in my life that I would be at any point a refugee. And when I left Syria and I left Damascus, I did not think that I'm not getting back there. And if I had the chance to go back to Syria at any point up till this moment, I would go directly back. And I think that's the feeling of everybody who left Syria.
Rameh is not the only newcomer who didn't want to leave her home. Haider Razak has lived in New Brunswick since he was 21. The Iraqi engineering student moved from Dubai with his family.
There is opportunity. If you work hard, you can get the result. Back home, the problem that we have is no matter how hard you work, sometimes you cannot get the result just because the system is corrupted and it's not good. But here the system make you, if you work hard, you get the result. And that's what I like about Canada.
But he has also experienced difficulties living in New Brunswick.
But if it was me at that time, and I had opportunity to go to a bigger city, I would go. Because there is not opportunities here. And that's sad because I really like Fredericton. If there is opportunity and a place to work, then I would stay here for the rest of my life. But I know that I can't. I will leave at some point. So if they have the chance and if they are not committed to any school or any program or anything, go to a bigger city. You will have better opportunities.
So far, more than 300 refugees have settled in the province. The federal government recently announced they'd be willing to accept 10,000 more in response to the welcoming desire in the country. Many are staying in hotels, and others are looking for permanent housing. But finding a permanent home and learning the language is just one of the very first steps to integrate into society. The Multicultural Association in Fredericton has asked for more volunteers to help. For St. Thomas Journalism, I'm Sarah Perez.
And now to the village of Gagetown, where a ferry closure has left many community members feeling slighted. This isn't the first time either that the ferry was cut, back in 2009 before being restored by the Graham government. That action was taken over after former MLA Eric Allaby filed a report with the government coming out to support the continuation and potential expansion of the ferry service in the region. For more on the situation, we go to David Bardwell.
For residents of Gagetown and Jemseg, it was a way of life. The ferry between their towns would be celebrating its 90th anniversary next year, but it's now left in a funding nightmare. The ferry was not included in this year's provincial budget, and according to the government, it wouldn't meet inspection requirements. This left a bad taste in Connie Denby's mouth, leading her to speak up along with members of the Save the Gagetown Ferry social media group.
People are working. There's a nursing home and 2 special care homes in this area. People travel back and forth for employment. There are people that are working for minimum wage at the UPICs, the vegetable stands and apple orchards and what have you. By the time they drive around, they're living on minimum wage to start with. By the time they travel these additional kilometers, is it really worth their while?
It's not just minimum wage and seasonal workers that utilize the ferry either. There's steady traffic from emergency personnel on the ferry as well. In a report compiled by Eric Allaby, a former MLA and head of the project to inspect the ferry system in Gagetown and Belle Isle, it was noted that the ferry was viewed as a primary passage for the fire crew's vehicles. Denby says that along with the emergency concerns, there's also a rather large economic factor to the ferry's operation.
For instance, when I'm thinking about wanting fresh vegetables in the spring or strawberries or whatnot, normally I would drive from Queenstown across the ferry to Jemseg, get my berries. Now, when I have to travel this extra distance to Upper Gagetown, it's sort of like you're going up, you're crossing, and then you're backtracking down to the area. I might as well drive on to Oromocto.
According to members of the Save the Gagetown Ferry Group, the move to cancel the ferry service simply doesn't add up. It cost around $110,000 to operate last year, with the service running 18 hours a day during the warmer months. Group members say that's a steal, considering it brings many times that in taxable revenue into the region. An effort was made to reach the government for comment, but no response was received in time for this report. The budget, however, does mention the ferry might not pass inspection by Transport Canada. This is a point which those in support of the ferry contest.
Not only did they not do their homework, but that the whole issue was not really considered, and our concern is that they're boxing themselves into to having said it's gone, that it's going to be hard for them to have the intestinal fortitude to say, well, perhaps we made a mistake.
He wasn't the only one concerned about the potential stubbornness of government to change its mind a second time either. For starters, there's no push by a former MLA like Allaby as of yet. The group remains hopeful that their traditions will not be erased without further consideration, though. This ferry launch point has been in place in service ferries since 1927. Prior to that, there were less coordinated trips offered through various means, according to Don Brenner, a resident in the area. Speaking with members of the community of Gagetown, one can get a great sense of nostalgia. It's not just that the ferry offered them reliable transit between two small towns, but also that it proved to be a social hub for events. Residents of Jemseg might say it was a tradition to take it across the St. John to get to the annual Queens County Fair, one of the oldest agricultural fairs in the nation. And one would only need to talk to a farmer from the Gagetown region to understand the impact it will have on agriculture as well.
I have a farm that's 10 kilometers down the road, and it takes me 17 minutes to get from my farm to my 300 acres of fields right over here. You can see it right here, and I'm standing right on the ferry landing. Without the ferry, it's going to take me over an hour, and I have to move cattle and hay over to that. I use this ferry a lot, and it's going to affect my bottom line hugely.
Without the ferry service, some are concerned that the unemployment in the region might rise. This is particularly concerning to some of those seasonal workers that commute into town. While the province has not responded directly, one thing is made clear by the Allaby report. It was well worth the investment to keep the ferry operating. This is largely due to the economic potential it has, as well as tourism potential and emergency personnel services. Touching on tourism, Denby said it was popular to have people take a ferry tour throughout the province. That chance is now gone.
To go that route. The Heritage Loop that was established a number of years ago here that encouraged people to sort of travel the ferry route. You could, many years ago, before the bridge was put in, you could cross the Upper Gagetown Ferry, which is gone now, cross the Gagetown Ferry, travel downriver across the Hampstead Ferry, which is now gone, travel on downriver, cross the Evandale Ferry, on downriver, cross the Westfield Ferry, cross the Gondola Point Ferry, and maybe go on to the Fundy Trail, or go down to St. Andrews and spend a few more days in this province instead of the 3 hours that it takes to drive through, which is happening so much now.
With this ferry closure comes the end of an era for rural communities of New Brunswick, say supporters. Between our dwindling tourist attractions and smooth roads, it's not surprising we're now known as the drive-through province. The ferry still isn't set to operate this year, but that doesn't sink the local residents' dreams of having it run again. For St. Thomas Journalism in Gagetown, New Brunswick, I'm David Bardwell.
Some people in New Brunswick can expect a little more change in their pockets from now on. Minimum wage in New Brunswick, as well as the rest of Canada, has been raised. Where some workers are happy for the extra cash, others say they need much more than that. Catherine Morehouse has the story.
New Brunswick has the lowest minimum wage in Canada, or at least they used to. April 1st, New Brunswick's minimum wage has been raised from $10.30 to $10.65, but it still isn't close to places like Nunavut, where minimum wage is at $13. British Columbia is now at the bottom, with the lowest minimum wage of $10.45 an hour. Some local business owners who pay their employees above minimum wage, like the Unplugged Board Game Cafe, are wondering what the increase will mean for their business. Co-owner of the cafe, Travis Grant, says he's wondering what the increase might mean for him and his staff.
We're still going to be paying our employees more than what the minimum wage will be, but the question becomes, should we raise what our standard is to go even further, and how much does that affect our bottom line? And that's something I haven't really calculated yet. So it's a question that I just don't know what we're going to do there.
Grant pays his employees more than $10.65, but those who do work for minimum wage will only see an increase of $28 a month, and that's only if you're working 40 hours a week. Minimum wage is not a living wage, and people who work at that rate are worried the increase isn't enough. Kaylee Schroeder worked at a local retail store and says she couldn't imagine having to rely solely on a paycheck with minimum wage pay.
I think for a student, it's enough, like for someone who is just working like a retail job, just on the side or whatever, but for someone who has to make a living off of that, I don't think it's enough at all.
The increase can mean many things. Grant says he is unsure of how this will affect customer foot traffic because his business model is so unlike anyone else's.
And so I haven't been open long enough to see what the ramifications of increasing minimum wage is. So I've talked to some business owners, but one of them says, yeah, it's going to help business. Another one says, no, it's going to hurt business. And we have a really unique business model here. So it's almost been 100% true of anything that we've done here. It's never been the same as any other business when I've asked for advice. So
the government of New Brunswick has promised to raise minimum wage to $11 by the year 2017. For Stu Journalism, I'm Catherine Morehouse.
Children are involved in sports from a young age, sometimes because it's what they want, but sometimes it's because their parents want them to. Fernanda Damiani looks into the world of sports and what the benefits and disadvantages are of getting children involved.
From ballet to soccer, hockey, volleyball, or even basketball.
I play basketball because it's my passion and it's fun.
That's Maya Hachi. She's 10 years old and has played basketball since she was 8.
It's my passion because I like to interact with other people and I like competitive sports. It's fun because I get to make friends and it's a team sport, so I like it because of that.
Others, like Carlos Paz, started as early as 1 year old.
My favorite sport is soccer because a lot of people play it and my brother plays it too.
I was probably grade 10 at that point. That was the indoor league that we...
Or a few years later. That's what happened with Luke Garrigan, a St. Thomas University athlete who's played soccer since he was 4.
I was able to, before I even started school, go meet people, build friendships, and friendships that last even today with my roommate. Like I met him while I was playing Timbit soccer when I was 4 years old. So that was huge, and it also taught me a lot of things, especially soccer now. It teaches me a lot of good morals and values in that, teamwork and respect for others, respect for myself.
Others, like Angie Bosse, who practiced yoga since she was 10, sees it as something fun to do from time to time.
It's something that I was familiar with because my mom has been doing it for so long. I'm just like, yeah, why not? It'll be fun, relaxing, and just to try something new. And the more I do it, the more I fall in love with it.
And some children pursue it as their career. For example, the best soccer player in the world, Lionel Messi, has played soccer since he was 7. And that happens in every sport. The player of the year for the 2011-12 season of the Greater Toronto Hockey League, Connor McDavid, has been on skates since he was 3 years old. And it's the same for dance teacher Diane Garrett, who says dancing is the love of her life.
I knew from the age of 5 that this was what I was going to do. There was never, ever anything else that I was ever going to do, and that was hard for parents to understand.
At the same time, some parents support their kids to get into new sports, others don't quite understand it. Garrett says it was hard for parents to understand she wasn't going to university.
But she says parents should never force their kids to do what they don't want to.
I think to force your child that you have an image of what you wanted to do or what you want for your child might not be what they want to do, and it's just going to make for a very unhappy child. And yeah, I think it's a bit of a balance.
Karen went from dancing as a kid to professional dancing for years, and now she's a dance teacher. After 55 years dancing, Garrett says it's hard to find a balance once someone dedicates their lives to sports.
There seems to be dancers and athletes that are attracted to dance or attracted to sport, have a certain way where they drive themselves that is unlike a lot of the other people. It's different, that dedication to go after something, and because it means you can't participate in, you can't stay up late, you've got to take care of your body, there's a lot of things that come with that dedication and with that commitment to the art. But it doesn't feel like you're giving anything up. It may look that way to the outside, but that's what it takes to reach that goal.
Just like Garrett, Gergen says sports can be really frustrating.
Sports are such an emotional activity where, you lose a huge game and it seems like the end of the world. So I think there were definitely times where I was frustrated, but to the point of giving up, I don't think I ever hit that point.
Gargan says that even with downsides, it's worth it. He said his life wouldn't be the same without soccer.
At the end of the day, I would miss the team too much, and I would miss the family environment, because here at St. Thomas, our team, especially last year, was exactly that. It was a family. It was a group of guys that you could go to for anything, so I can't see myself leaving that.
For Gergen and others, sports are really emotional activities. And some specialists say it might affect children's lives in a bad way. Injuries, pressure from parents and coaches, and the way other children behave. The National Center for Sports Safety says more than 3 million children had some kind of injuries related to sports. For Stu Journalism, Fernanda Damiani reports.
Drag shows are crucial for the LGBTQIA+ community. They give a voice to its people in a different way. On these spectacles, these performers remind everyone how important diversity is. Maria Burgos was there to report.
From high heels to wigs and heavy makeup, drag shows are a unique spectacle to celebrate queerness. Al Cusack says these shows are accessible ways to introduce people to the idea of diversity.
So we think that this show is really important for the queer and trans community at STU because it emphasizes celebrating queer and trans identities. And one of the strongest parts about the LGBTQ movement has been our ability to celebrate our identities and to have joy in what we do.
But being a drag performer is not the same thing as being trans or gay. Everyone can be a drag queen, not only transgender people. Society is becoming more accepting of this culture, including universities like St. Thomas. Brooke Rivers is a drag performer. She said even high school kids and little children approach her to talk and ask for pictures.
This past summer we got to perform at Pride in Fredericton, and it was a great day. We were outside in the park and we had tons of people who had basically never seen us before who had the chance to actually talk to us.
Cusack believes people, especially in university, are more tolerant towards diversity.
People aren't necessarily more educated in university than they are in high school, but they're more willing to learn and they're more aware of their ignorances.
However, this is not the case for every single person. Drag queen Trinity Fox says not everyone has shown respect.
There was one incident in particular that a gentleman came in and we were there, we just finished our show, and he decided to get in our face and call us freaks and just very slanderous names, and luckily the bouncers got rid of him, but yeah, he was very in our face. He actually pushed one of the other queens, so.
Even though there has been a move towards equality for all, there are still a few that need to catch up. For Stu Journalism, I'm Maria Jose Burgos.
That's the end of our show. On behalf of the third-year journalism students at St. Thomas University, I'm Kennedy Bowden-Welsh.
And I'm Mitchell Pearden. We'll see you back here in September with some new journalism.